to get started, I want to direct you guys to dcp.dev in your browser.
Want to share your screen?
Yep.
That's fine. Let's do the whole desktop.
Where is it?
It's already selected. You just hit share.
Cool. So you probably got a link to this site in the PDF that Topaz sent out earlier. She indicated a lot of necessary steps for this hackathon. So if you're ready to go, let's just get started. So on this website, we have a link to our developer guide, and that is the first thing you're going to want to press. From here, we have a nice introduction saying, welcome to DCP. And one caveat is that we want to kind of outline this little part here. We're currently in our beta stages right now, and we've invited developers to come and try it out. You guys at the hackathon are actually a really cool exception, meaning you have access just like the first beta testers to our platform. So please just disregard this message. And if any of your friends are asking during the hackathon, like, oh, what does this mean? Just let them know that you're free to go. Other than that, we have our tutorials, quick start guide, really fast, just gets you right into it. The developer guide is what you're going to want to click on, and it's going to walk you through step by step, basically how to get started with this whole platform. Cool. So overview, basically how we get started with DCP is you have to make an account on our portal. And as part of the hackathon this weekend, you guys are given special access on the portal, meaning that as soon as you sign up between now and the end of Sunday, we give you guys special access to deploy jobs to the network, as well as some distributed compute credits in order to actually deploy jobs and pay for the work that other people are doing. So that's the first step. We have to make an account. Next one, we're going to be setting up our key stores on your computer so that when you're trying to launch jobs, everything works properly. After that, we're going to set up the development environment. If you're familiar with vanilla web, just using JavaScript on the browser, we're going to do that, as well as Node if anybody's interested. I know, Will, you were talking about that, so we'll check that out. And after that, we'll just get started and deploy our first job. Really simple job, but you'll be able to make your own cool ones from there. So let's just jump right in. So I will make an account on the portal here. There you go. So just click register and should send me a verification code. Oh, not secure. Cool. So I'm going to go check my email and type in the verification code.
You not know your Gmail password? You could log in on this.
I can.
It's your call.
I'll do it.
I might just explain to the audience at home that Parker's borrowing my laptop, and so he doesn't have access to his Gmail on the laptop. So he's typing in the code. But of course, in your email, you get a link, and you can click on the link.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Wow, nice typing.
Oh, okay. So we're signed into the portal. And one thing that we have running right now is that special script that gives you access to credits and deploying. And if you check your accounts page right now in the portal, you might notice that you don't have anything yet. It takes a few minutes to get up and running. So just don't worry about that. It'll pop up in a couple minutes and we'll check that. But for right now, I just want to give you a quick tour of the portal, because this is where you access a lot of the necessary aspects of DCP. So the first one I wanted to show you, which is here in the tutorial, is the worker tab. This is the heart of what's going on with DCP. This is the worker. And from right here, you can open it up, press start, and your computer will start computing slices of work that are being distributed across the network. Right here, you can see Electrodynamics at home is currently deployed a job on the network. And right now on Casey's laptop, we're computing slices of work, which is pretty awesome. You'll also notice once one of these actually finishes that this little spot right here shows you how many distributed compute credits you actually earned for doing that work. And distributed compute credits is what you're going to be using to deploy your jobs because you have to pay the other people for the work they did. Actually, I'll actually let that finish so you can see it kind of pop up. There you go. So you can see the little amount of credits that we earn for each slice that we complete, which is pretty cool.
Now, just a question. Are those credits Bitcoin? Are they redeemable for money?
Not currently, but that is the plan for the future, I believe. Yep.
You should stop us from the battery.
That's awesome.
Cool. So next I'll show you the profile page. This is where you can put in some of your information. Well, it's also the location where you're going to be retrieving your identity key store, which is unique to you. And it basically just tells the scheduler that you deployed this job. And so we can kind of trace back who's doing which work on the network, which is pretty cool. Next is the accounts page. And this is pretty important because it lists all of the bank accounts that you have with DCP. And in a moment here, when we refresh the page, we should see the one pop up that already has 25 credits in it. But one key thing is that the work we just did for this default bank account, you can see that right here, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is refresh the page, and hopefully we should have been given special access. Oh no, really? Okay, well.
Now, if I refresh, will I get special access too?
If you just signed up, you should have been given special access. It might take a few minutes to pop up, but yeah.
No, it was an older account.
No. If you've already made an account, I don't believe you've been given special access since we've kind of enabled
signed
this.
up since like 2 today.
Yeah, since about 2 o'clock today is when we kind of turned on that that ability. So new hackathon participants can kind of get it during this weekend.
Okay, I'll just create a new account.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you might need to sign into your email. Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Okay. Try and sign in again.
You can't even hear forgot password. Just
There you go. I can actually copy this time. That's
you
nice.
can also just hit reset password.
Cool. Okay. Just sign back in, check my account, and you can see the August 2020 hackathon account has popped up, which is great. So that now means I have some nice credits to spend, as well as I now have the ability to deploy my jobs on the network. So that's great. And we can move on with the tutorial. So step 2, you're all signed up. Now you need to download and set up your key stores. And starting with the bank key store, you're going to want to navigate to the accounts tab in the portal and navigate to specifically, you're most likely going to be wanting to use the key store we gave some credits on it. So I'm just going to click the little drop down arrow, press download. You can see it, it already gave it a name. And one thing I might want to do is actually change the name to default.keystore because that's the default name that it looks for.
Yeah, we'll need to move it to .dcp, huh?
Yep, not yet.
Are you going to do that later?
Yep.
Okay.
So once we've downloaded the bank key store, this is the one that will be having credits taken out of it as we deploy jobs from the web or Node or whatever you're using. And next is downloading the ID key store specific to you. And in order to do that, it's located on the profile page, kind of near the bottom. There you are. So if you want to create a new ID key store called provisioning, just click the little green button there, name it whatever you want. And there you go. And now I should be able to download this key store and give it a password if I'd like. And if you don't want a password, just for convenience sake, during the hackathon, wanting to deploy a lot of jobs, don't have to. And so I'm just not going to. And you can see it saved that as id.keystore into my downloads folder, which is good. You can see in here, it does say we recommend naming ID key store because that's the default name that the DCP kind of searches for when it's looking for your key stores. And after that, we're going to want to actually move the key stores into a location on our computer that DCP looks for. And that differs depending on your computer. So if you're on Windows, which I'm sure a lot of you will be, the default location that we kind of search for is in C users, your username, and then .dcp. And if you notice that that's not already there, which it shouldn't be, you're going to have to create the directory and then copy those files in there. And on macOS and Linux, it's located in the home directory. This is a bit of a typo. You just want to put it in the ~key /.dcp, which you will also have to make. And so we're going to do that now. Try and get this away. Yeah, there you go. Cool. So I'm going to be using the terminal for this because I find it easier, but if you like just dragging and dropping the files around, that's good too. So I'm going to make a directory called .dcp in my home tilde directory. And then I'm going to want to move my id.keystore from my downloads into my .dcp folder. I'm going to do the same with my default key store. Cool. So now if I navigate into my .dcp folder I made, list the files there, I should see these two, which is super important for Node projects. If you're doing vanilla web projects, it won't actually look here. You get to kind of pick the bank key store you use, and your ID key store has to be kind of sitting in the web folder. So I'm just going to download another version of my ID key store. So I have two. Cool. And that's it. So now the key stores are set up and we're ready to actually start getting our development environment set up. So Will, I remember you said you were familiar with Node.
Yep.
I'm sure some of you are familiar with vanilla web development, maybe both. I'm going to run through both. If you don't feel like doing the Node one, just kind of watch and wait. I'm going to cover the vanilla web one right after. So I just want to go through both in case someone's interested. So first of all, it's the latest version of Node. Second of all, you're going to want to make a new project and make sure it's got a package.json file. So I'm going to make a new project. And I'm going to run npm init to make that package JSON. Let's give it the default names and everything. Cool. So now you can see package.json was made, and this kind of gets us ready to actually start doing npm install DCP client, which is the entry point to everything DCP, which is pretty exciting. So DCP client, and then just go and grab DCP client from npm's repository of packages. And for anybody who hasn't used Node before, hopefully this example can kind of just show you how easy it is to get up and running with JavaScript out of the browser. So if you've never touched it before, this is actually a pretty good place to learn, I think.
Yeah, I might need to help you out there on my computer because I use a version manager that confuses what's it called, Node.jip, and can't figure out which Python to use. Sorry.
All good.
Let's try that again. So I just have to tell it for this shell session to use Python 2.
Okay.
Otherwise, it asks ASDF which Python to use, and it grabs the wrong one. I don't know why. That's an ASDF thing. There you go.
Okay. Just want to check in for whoever's following along. Am I going a bit too fast or right speed? Let me know if you're still just waiting on stuff to install.
I have a question. To the key stores, I have to move 2 of them to the DCP directory. Is it, I download the default key store. Is the other key store that I want the August 2020 Hackathon key store?
One of them is the bank key store, which we renamed to default. And that was the one I downloaded was the August Hackathon.
Okay, but we want them both in that DCP directory?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And
Yeah,
do
no
I want to rename the August 20 to ID, that key store?
You want to rename the August 2020 Hackathon one to default.keystore.
Ah.
That is the current default name of bank key stores that we look for.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. So depending on which development environment you like to use, we're just going to use VS Code here. And I can launch that quickly from the terminal. Cool. So you can see basically empty node project, as simple as it gets. We npm install DCP client, and we're basically ready to go and start making some node files. So I'm going to make one just called index.js. Cool. And that's all the steps you need to get ready with making your node project. We'll run through some examples actually. And if you're curious right now to actually check one out, we have a node exemplar, which is a good first example for launching your first node application. Actually, if you guys want, let me know. Did you want me to go through that example right now?
Sure.
Cool. Okay. So this is a GitHub repository we have. And I'm just going to clone this one. It's basically exactly what we just did. It's got a package installed DCP client with just a pretty basic JavaScript file. So I'll clone that. Cool. So this is an example Wes actually made, and it runs through a lot of the basic functionality of DCP and kind of outlines just how simple it is to launch your first job. So open it up here. We have a main function, asynchronous, which allows us to use a await, which is pretty nice. And just like in Hamada's example and in Ryan's example, you can see we require the compute module from DCP. We also require the wallet module, which helps with specifying where the wallet should be. And right here is our job that we want to deploy into the network. So you can see here our input set is a very basic input set. It's not an image of tensors. It's an array of colors. And what we can do is next argument is provided the work function, which takes in a color, each one of these values, logs it, and returns it. And that's it. That's the job that we want to kind of split up and deploy across hundreds of computers. And after that, we have our events, kind of just lets us know, like if the job's accepted, print that. Once the job's complete, print that. If there's any state change during the job, print that. And the result. You can also print the result. These here are setting like the public name of your job. So if you remember back in the worker tab, you can see electrodynamics at home. It's kind of similar. It just tells you the name of the job that's going on, so you know what you're computing, which is pretty neat. You might actually notice during the hackathon, like other hackers' jobs popping up on your worker, and you're actually computing for the other hackers, which will be pretty interesting. Other than that, we are manually loading the wallet key store, going like let key store equal wallet.get from the DCP module. And as you can see here, it loads it from right there, which is what we did in the previous step. After that, we launch our job.exec. We basically just tell it like compute at market value. I don't want to charge any more or less for this job. I just want it to be the regular market value of distributed compute credits. And that's about it. You can see that if I run this, hello, I lost it. Here you go. Okay. I think I totally just closed the window there. There you go. I'm struggling on this MacBook, by the way. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
And you don't even do the Python thing again for the shell. Right, well, I guess you never closed the other one, yeah?
No, I never did.
Okay. So it'll use the same Python.
Mm-hmm.
Same Python rule.
Yeah, I forgot to npmi on this one. It's a new project I made. Cool. So now I'll just run the file, and you'll see all the code that Wes typed in. It'll launch the job, and we'll see the status as it goes.
I think you want to send this to the deploy to the demo scheduler.
I should have access.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're in setup. We should.
Interesting. As a learning experience, this error here that we got saying role deploy is required, basically just says that you haven't been added to the special deploy list. That's probably just an issue we have with the setup on this laptop, but as a fresh install with a fresh account, which you guys will have, it'll just deploy it, and you'll see all these event callbacks kind of spit out as the job gets deployed across the network. That was a fairly quick overview, but a bit of a simple example of launching our first job in Node. Yeah. Continuing on to vanilla web, if anybody's interested on using it like that. The setup for this is actually even quicker than using Node, which is pretty exciting. You can also add it on to any existing web project you have. And distribute compute across our network, which is pretty cool. So in order to gain access to all the good DCP kind of flavored code that we have into your project, all you have to do is add this little script tag to the top of your HTML file. And if you've never used HTML, you've never done web development or JavaScript before, don't worry, we have a bunch of different examples to kind of get you started. And it's a pretty good place to start learning. So for example, here we have a quick demo, which I will open. It's just on JS Fiddle, a good spot to kind of show off quick web projects. And you can see here, here's our HTML file, index.html. You can see at the top, we imported the script for the scheduler, and it kind of grabs DCP client, gets everything ready so you can use it on your project. Rest of the HTML is just like super basic button with some text kind of telling you what to do for people who aren't in this workshop. And right here is all the JavaScript you need to launch a super, super simple job on the network. This at the top is what gets the compute module from DCP client, which allows you to do job equals compute.do, compute.for, things like that. And other than that, all I did was get a button that tells you to kind of launch this job whenever you click it. And here it is. Here's all the code. So job equals compute.do 10. What this basically does is it feeds in 0 to 9 as the inputs to this work function. And all the work function does right now, maybe you wouldn't really need to distribute this one, but it's just I times 10. So it's going to go 0 times 10, 1 times 10, 2 times 10, and it might split that up into 10 different computers, and they're all going to compute it. And I just have some super simple events. I listen for console if I ever wanted to put a console.log in here. I listen for when the job gets accepted to let me know, and I listen for when it gets complete, and I print some results. And just like before, I gave my job a public name, public description, and otherwise I should be good to go. Cool. Oh, this is so tiny. So it's prompting me to pick my key store. And this might be a little bit vague, but it's prompting me to pick my bank key store, the one that it will take credits out of as I deploy the job. So I'm going to go ahead and
I don't want to make your invisible files visible if it's sitting there. And then pick your bank key store.
Yep. Now, since I made an account using an email that I believe already existed, potentially, it might give me that deploy error again. We're not too sure, but let me know if you guys are able to do this and it deploys okay. Bit of a quick test run before the hackathon starts in case we need to iron out any other issues. Yeah, okay, so same issue.
Yeah, and I'd just like to mention that actually for the hackathon, we have a scheduler, our demo scheduler, which we're planning on having folks use because then it's not mixed in with the traffic over on the main scheduler. So that'll be a nice place to work from, and it actually doesn't require ID key store. Like you'll have permission on the main network, which is cool, but it won't be required. So I think if we run this again, we can give this another go. Oh, I gotta resize this.
You might push minimize there.
Try that again. Oh, good, I remembered.
It's a bank key store.
No.
There you go. Default.
Default. That's the bank one.
And yeah,
now we
if
can
you
bring this
open up the
console
console,
back
you
up.
should see the logs basically. Accepted our job. We don't really pop anything out until the job's done, but there's a list of the results that got computed by.
And when you see the docs, there are actually a bunch of events besides these ones. You can get an event on every result and all status events and all kinds of things to get a better idea of what's going on as well.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. We just really wanted to give you a nice bite-sized piece to start, so it wasn't a little bit too daunting as you first started. But
that's right.
Just using an HTML file and a JavaScript script that's, 40 lines long, not even, you can deploy a task onto the network, which is pretty cool. This next part, deploying jobs, is basically what we just went through with these demos, but we wanted to give you guys a bunch of different examples and a bunch of different use cases to kind of inspire you to make your own functions for work. So in this one, we just do job equals compute.for, gives us a range of 1 to 10, and it uses that range of 1 to 10 as inputs to this. It just goes n plus 100. It calls progress, which is actually really important within a work function. And there's a little bit more on that later in the docs. But if you wanted me to just go over it now, it's something that you have to call in your work function, basically to just let it know that it is progressing. And if you don't, it'll spit out a little error saying it's not progressing and kind of cancel that job. Yeah, and so all this does, it goes n plus 100, result times n, and then spits it out. And that's the entire function. And it's pretty basic, but you can kind of see how this can get split up and split across many different computers. And in the same vein, in vanilla web rather than Node, you can see it's basically the same exact structure, aside from importing compute from DCP client is just a little bit different up at the top. This one, all it does is split the job up into red, green, and blue and log the color like we saw before. And a word of advice, this was also mentioned in the PDF. As you're deploying jobs, it actually costs you credits to deploy jobs. And if you don't want to be deploying credits or deploying massive jobs that you don't know work, we have something called local exec. And what local exec does is, instead of typing exec here, you can do local exec, and that will run the job on your own computer without costing you any credits at all, which is a great way of testing. If you're a researcher and you had this really complex task that you wanted to put on the network that would cost you hundreds of DCs, and that's all you got, you wouldn't want to put out a task that you didn't know worked. So that's kind of the intention of local exec. And we expect that if you guys want to get a lot of tasks done, get them done quickly, and make sure it's not costing you a bunch of stuff throughout the weekend, just
it's also good for debugging, because the work function, instead of getting sent to some other computer you can't see, it gets sent to your computer. It uses the same schedule, uses all the same connectivity. You have to have an internet connection. So it's really the same as the real job, but it's going to send to your own device. And so you'll be able to inspect that process. And if you're on the web, you'll be able to use Chrome's debugging tools, for example, and see what's actually going on inside.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So pretty much the last few steps of this tutorial just kind of outlines the ramifications of deploying jobs. So every time you deploy a job, it costs you some DCCs. And you'll actually notice, like, if I try launching a job and it succeeds, I can actually go into my portal and see that my DCC balance went down. So it went down from 25 DCC to 24 point something. And you might want to watch that throughout the weekend. I don't know if you'd be deploying enough to really run it that low, but definitely something to look out for. Here's just a quick list of some of the events you can listen to, as we did in our example here. Console accepted complete. You can see the list is right here. And there's definitely some other ones as well. It's in the documentation. And after that, we just gave you a big list of examples just so you can kind of see where our head was at when we gave you all the access to all these functions. So, it's logging things, it's just printing hello world. This one catches an error, all pretty helpful listeners. So, and lastly, we just wanted to outline a couple of the different modules that you have access to. You probably would have noticed in Hamada and Ryan's example that they were using things like DCP CLI or Wallet. And these give you a lot of extra tools to kind of interact with DCP how you want, rather than the default behavior in a lot of these examples here. So there's plenty of documentation you can see here on how to use these and what methods you have access to when you're using them. So if you're ever looking for a more in-depth control of what you can do on DCP, we're going to prompt you to kind of go to the documentation throughout the weekend. And lastly, we currently support WebGL. If you wanted to do tasks like that, if you're looking to read more about how to deploy jobs for GPU, read here. I don't know if you really can right now. Can?
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
For some of them.
Yeah. Other than that, that's it for this entire tutorial to kind of get you up and running. And we're hoping by now that you have an okay enough sense that you could kind of look through our documentation and start trying to figure out how to launch some really cool distributed jobs.